Hey everybody, this is Dylan. I'll be doing the Friday Focus for you guys today. I am going to go over the underwriting of an 8-unit property that I just bought here in Cincinnati, or running you through the math I use when calculating the deal, if we should buy it, if we should sell it, and just hoping to show you some of the metrics that I look for in some of my investments. So to start off, this is a 8-unit building on the west side of Cincinnati, in a decent school district. And it was currently, it was a mixed use building before we bought it, and it had been run down for years. And actually, this was a direct to seller. It had 4 units on the top that are all 1 bedrooms, and below it were basically mixed use office buildings. 2 of them were vacant, really run down. 1 unit was currently had someone living as residential, and then the back right unit was pretty much gutted. And the place is in pretty much disarray. The city had gotten a hold of it too because of some zone violations. It actually wasn't permitted in residential at the bottom, and it needed permits for that. So the city got involved, and that's ultimately why the seller wanted to sell. He didn't have the money to fix it up. He was honestly pretty much a slumlord. And so he was pretty motivated to sell. We got it for $190,000. And I kind of work these deals from what backwards to the front end. And so based on sales in that area of other multi-unit places, I think a conservative estimate is about $80,000 per door. And you can also do this via the financials, like what we'll get into. So 8 units times 80,000 doors, about $640,000 would be the back end, like ARV number that I'm kind of anticipating once it's all said and done. On the pro forma side, I mean, his rents really didn't matter. He was getting like $600 a month for the 4 upstairs. But again, because they're in like disarray, we needed to get them out anyway. We ended up doing cash for keys, and all of them left, which was awesome because his leases were a little bit too long. But on the underwriting side for the 1 bedroom, I estimated $900 per month, and at the 2 bedrooms, maybe $1,200 a month. There are 6 1 bedrooms and 2 2 bedrooms. We're going to actually turn one of the mixed use, the commercial spaces into a 2 bedroom. And I got these numbers simply from 1, kind of knowing the area. 2, Rentometer is a good source I use. I have the pro account. And then just looking at Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Zillow, just kind of gauging what is currently available for rent around there. So all in at $900 for the 6 1 bedrooms and $1,200 for the 2 bedrooms. The total gross monthly rent is $7,800 per month. Okay. And then we are going to factor in taxes. So in my area, they get reassessed every 3 years. I actually reassessed it at what it's going to be. And this is actually like conservative underwriting because they'll see the purchase price of $190,000 and they probably won't adjust, accordingly to at least the new value. But taxes are $728 a month. Insurance actually will go down because right now I have the builder's risk policy on it, but it's about $425 a month. And then I ran out of the ARV is 640, 75% of that's $480,000. Principal and interest is 7.25%, which is $3,469.47. So my PITI on this building is $46.23.15. Now you take in, I do 3% for vacancy, CapEx, and maintenance. So it's like 9% off gross income, and then 8% for management, which I have an assistant now that will manage this property for me. But I still kind of factor that into the underwriting. We will have to pay some water and sewer. And in our area, it's about $60 a unit to estimate. So that's $560 in water. We'll have some common area electric, which I estimate at $75 a month. We have a dumpster there, which is $120 a month. And then lawn and snow service, which is another $75 a month. And that's also includes like grass cutting, stuff like that. So our total, those expenses are an additional $2,156. And so if you combine the PITI plus those other expenses, you're at $6,779.15. Take that gross income minus those total expenses, and your cash flow is $1,020.85, or $12,250 annually. Going back to the beginning of this is we're buying it for $190. Our rehab budget's like 265, have some hard money costs in there, some carrying costs. My total all in right now is calculated at 486,500. Okay. And that 75% of the ARV is 480,000. So my total out of pocket on the pro forma side is $6,500 when I go to refi this thing and add up all the carrying costs along the way. Not including about halfway through this rehab, we'll rent out the top 4 units. So that will count as some income that would, help offset some of these. But now you're looking at a cash on cash or an ROI, my $6,500 out of pocket over $12,250 a year in annual cash flow with all set asides, that cash on cash is 188%. So, I mean, a cash on cash, that's pretty good. Plus for $6,500, I created $160,000 of equity. And this is kind of why the BRRRR strategy is so popular. You're creating $160,000 worth of equity for $6,500. You have a positive cash flowing asset and you're recycling this money. All of this is 100% funded by hard and private money. So I don't really have any money out of my own pocket. Going a little bit further, calculating that's on a different basis is if you just take the total expenses outside of the principal and interest payments and to calculate your net operating income or NOI, that is $53,883 a year. So if you take that $53,883 over the $640,000 ARV, then that's a cap rate of 8.42%, which I would say is pretty on par with that area. If anything, that's probably a little high. And so if you were to actually calculate this at like a 7% cap rate based on the NOI, the value is around $770,000, which I don't think you'd get that for this particular area, but purely from a cap rates perspective, that's what I would call for. The other thing we kind of looked at is the DSCR. That's what the lenders, like the bank, is going to look at too on the refi process, especially if you're using a DSCR lender. So DSCR is debt service coverage ratio, and typically they want to see anything above a 1.25. So basically that is, what is your cash flow over what is your monthly payment, principal and interest. And ours right now is 1.29. So lenders are going to see that and they'll be happy with that underwriting as well. All in all, this is a very large rehab. And so the timeline I'm estimating to be around 6 to 8 months. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule right now because I was able to get those other tenants out quicker than I thought. We did end up having to pull permits, pulled plans because the city was involved. I made sure that the zoning was approved. One of the bigger surprises we've had with this property is it is adjacent to a bar and grill, where you would think that the owner of this property would be delighted that this eyesore of a property that's been adjacent to his has been finally being uplifted and revitalized, and it'd be good for his patrons, so everything, right? But he has turned out to be quite a pain. For example, when we were putting on the siding and the new windows, we had like ladders and stuff technically in his parking lot, but we weren't impeding on his customers. We weren't really in the way. We were just kind of using some of his space because there's not a lot of space in between my building and his parking lot. But he ended up even calling the cops because we were quote unquote trespassing. And even the cops were like, dude, like, I don't really understand why he's doing this, but technically he's right. So that's kind of been a pain. But other than that, like, this will be a good cash flowing property for me. It is something I plan to keep long-term. One thing I kind of look at too on my portfolio allocation is if you have ample reserves already set aside, like, yes, you have to undercount for those phantom expenses, like the vacancy, CapEx, maintenance, and all that kind of stuff. But if you already have the reserves, like, that's extra cash flow that you only have to dip into when needed. So adding that up, that's another $600, almost $700 in extra quote unquote cash flow that I'll have because I already have the reserve set aside. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me, Dylan_does_deals on Instagram. I have been sharing some of the progress pictures with this property. And we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll come back when the refi process happens and see how accurate my underwriting was. Thanks, guys, and I hope you have a great day.